All right, today we're diving into a book that has sold millions and millions of copies for one pretty simple reason. It offers a direct answer to a problem we all face. We're talking about Norman Vincent Peale's classic, The Power of Positive Thinking. And we're going to break down its core strategies for kicking self-doubt to the curb and replacing it with real, decisive action.
I mean, it all starts right here, doesn't it? That little voice in the back of your head, the one that whispers, "You can't do this," right when it matters the most. Peale believed that this single feeling, this sense of inferiority, is at the root of so many of our biggest struggles.
But here's the thing, Peale doesn't just give you a pep talk. He offers you a whole new operating system for your mind. And this idea? This is the foundation. It's not about pretending self-doubt doesn't exist. It's about overpowering it with a belief so strong that the impossible starts to look, well, just a little bit difficult.
And that brings us to our first big idea, the battle in your mind. See, Peale's genius was in framing this whole thing not as some deep personality flaw, but as a conflict, a battle. And the most important thing to know out of any battle is that it's one you can actually win.
Peale kicks off his book with this exact scenario. Get this, a guy at the absolute peak of his career about to close a massive deal, but inside, he's totally frozen, paralyzed by the thought, I'm going to fail. This story just goes to show you that an inferiority complex doesn't care how successful you are. It attacks you from the inside out.
So how in the world do you fight back? Well, this isn't about just gritting your teeth and trying harder. It's about something much more fundamental, rewiring for confidence. Peale basically gives us a practical toolkit for what we'd now call changing your neural pathways, building real, lasting confidence from the ground up.
Okay, this is the real nuts and bolts of it, and the power here is just how simple it is. Step one, you have to become a detective of your own thoughts. You got to identify that negative thought the second it pops up. Then, you don't just ignore it. You actively replace it with a positive truth you've already chosen. And the third step, this is the one that makes all the difference. You repeat it over and over. You say it until it feels more real than the doubt ever did.
And this is that repetition in action. Peale tells this great story of a salesman who literally wrote down positive affirmations on index cards. He put them everywhere, in his car, on his desk, in his pocket. He was basically creating a whole new mental diet for himself, force-feeding his mind positivity until that became its natural default state.
Here's another amazing technique, and it's basically a total shift in your mental accounting. You know how when we're feeling down, we start listing all our liabilities, every mistake, every weakness, everything that's gone wrong? Peale's advice is to just stop and deliberately make a list of your assets. And not just money. We're talking your skills, your relationships, the opportunities you have. He tells of a man on the verge of giving up who did this and was just floored when he realized how truly rich he actually was.
So let's build on that. Because confidence isn't just about shouting bold affirmations at yourself in the mirror. It's strengthened by something much deeper, a state of inner peace, or what Peale liked to call tranquility.
Now, when Peale talks about tranquility, he doesn't just mean the absence of noise. Think of it less like an empty, silent room and more like a powerful, focused engine that's running silently. It's this active state of deep calm that fuels clear thinking and ultimately effective action.
And his advice for finding this state was incredibly down to earth. He told people to build mental sanctuaries, a quiet lake, a forest path that you can just retreat to in your mind anytime. To literally carve out moments of actual silence in our noisy world. And to basically become a bouncer for your conversations, choosing peace over drama every single time.
For Peale, prayer was also a huge tool here, but he saw it less as a last-ditch, break glass in case of emergency kind of thing, and more as a practical, daily tool for problem solving. It was about opening a channel for guidance. He even told a story about a man who found peace just by talking through his problems with a minister over the phone. It was that act of connecting to a source of strength that made all the difference.
And this all leads us to the really deep work, using these principles not just for personal success, but for healing our emotional wounds and building stronger connections with the people around us.
I absolutely love this term Pete uses, grudgeitis. He actually quotes a doctor who believed one of his patients literally died from it, from a long-held grudge that became physically toxic. It's such a powerful reminder that resentment poisons the person who's holding on to it.
So how do you cure it? His prescription is, well, that's going to sound completely backward. First, you have to do the one thing you least want to do, pray for the person you resent. He argued this act starts to soften even the most hardened heart. Second, voice the grievance. Get it out of you, release its power. And only then, he says, can forgiveness become a real, conscious healing choice.
And at the end of the day, all of this really comes back to love. But for Peele, love isn't some passive, fuzzy feeling. No way. It's an action. It is a choice. It's the strength it takes to extend compassion and look for the good in other people, especially when that's the absolute hardest thing in the world to do.
All right, so the big question, how does this advice from the 1950s actually hold up today in our world? It's really important we look at it with a modern lens.
Now, it's totally fair to bring up the critiques. Some people argue that focusing so intensely on your individual mindset can make you ignore real systemic problems that people face. And you know what? That's a valid point. The key is to see Peele's advice not as a denial of reality, but as a toolkit. It's about empowering you to act with agency within the world as it is. It's about focusing on the things you actually can control.
So, what's the final toolkit you can walk away with? First, action is everything. Second, be patient with yourself. You're undoing years of old thinking patterns. Third, take care of your connections. Those relationships are your greatest asset. And finally, find and tap into a source of strength that's bigger than just you, whatever that means for you.
And that brings us to the single most important takeaway from Peele's entire philosophy. Because after all the positive thoughts, all the affirmations, all the prayers, you have to remember this one crucial point. Belief by itself is not enough.
This right here is probably his most famous line. Positive thinking is the fuel in the tank, absolutely, but it's not the car. It has to be channeled into action, into work, into actual tangible steps towards your goals. Otherwise, it's all just wishful thinking. Faith has to be paired with works to create any real change.
So, as we close this out, remember that the power to change your entire life really can start with just a single thought. The only question left is the one you see right here. What's the first thought you are going to choose to change?